Unlike most films I review on this channel, Mowgli's Brothers is rather short. A television animated special, to be exact. It's supposed to be a pretty accurate adaptation of the original story by Rudyard Kipling, but to be honest, I haven't read the book. So don't expect any comparisons to be drawn in this review. With all that said, let's begin. Mowgli's Brothers is a 25-minute cartoon that aired on February 11, 1976, by the late and great Chuck Jones. Yes, the one who created animations for the Looney Tunes. The man's a legend. It's based specifically on the first chapter of the aforementioned book, hence why it's this short. All the male characters, including the narrator, were voiced by Roddy McDowall. And, well, that's about all I can muster up. Not much else is known about the special, other than its initial debut on the Columbia Broadcasting System, its 1985 VHS release by Family Home Entertainment, and its 1999 DVD release by Lionsgate. Although it may please you to know that you don't have to scavenge for copies of the film when you've got YouTube on your side. Let's get to the story. A wolf couple raising newborn cubs finds out that a tiger named Shere Khan is hunting in their part of the jungle. They are upset about this because they believe he is hunting man, which will very likely garner the attention of the humans living in a nearby village. Then, as if by chance, a little boy appears in front of their den. They protect him from the hungry Shere Khan and wish to take him in as their own, but not before getting the approval of their wolf council. With some input from Baloo the bear and Bagheera the panther, the boy is accepted into the pack and is named Mowgli. As Mowgli is growing up under the tutelage of Baloo and Bagheera, Shere Khan formulates a plan with his henchman, Tabaki the jackal, to turn all the wolves against their aging leader, Akela, by means of revenge. When Mowgli is 11 years old, Bagheera reveals to him what Shere Khan has been up to, and that he must be stopped at all costs. That's not all, however. Bagheera also tells him that he will eventually have to return with his own kind in order to try and prevent further conflict between man and nature, much to Mowgli's dismay. How do Mowgli and company take down the tyrannical tiger? Will Mowgli heed Bagheera's advice and live out the rest of his life with humans? Compared to Disney's The Jungle Book, Mowgli's Brothers is far more grounded and mature in its storytelling. It does a great job showing how passive and impressionable Shere Khan's followers are, as well as the strong sense of logic and morality our leaders possess. One example of the latter is shown when the wolf couple refrains from killing humans because they know that man will reciprocate by hunting them for food and extracting their resources. This line of thinking demonstrates their desire to minimize conflict and strengthen their chance of survival. Another example is seen in the council's decision to not dismiss Mowgli as nothing more than jungle fodder and to actually give him a chance to develop animalistic instincts so that he could someday lead the pack. They know full well that he's out of his element, but they nonetheless have enough of a heart to give him the same care as they do their own cubs. Moreover, they teach him to fend for himself, which is the greatest gift you could give to someone who is left with nothing. Mowgli himself isn't a complete blank slate here. While he is closely guided by Bagheera, and not so much Baloo, who surprisingly doesn't have that big of a role in this film, he is still able to think for himself in many scenarios. He knows when to be assertive and intimidating towards Shere Khan and the other wolves, but is also compassionate when tending to his family members. He can be mischievous, as indicated in his pranks on Shere Khan and Tabaki, but knows to never take his troublemaking too far to the point of setting them off lest he's scolded by Bagheera. Unlike many child cartoon characters, this version of Mowgli is given clear dimensions to his personality. He is quite shrewd for a young boy in this adaptation, but it makes sense given the situation he's in as well as the choices he has to make. He is surrounded by death traps at every turn, which means that he needs to be strategic and resourceful, like the rest of his pack. His turmoil becomes apparent when he has to decide between two worlds, given what's at stake. I like the reasoning Bagheera gives for going back. It is ultimately safer for him to be with his kind. It shows just how complex the issue is. While Mowgli is clearly well adapted to the jungle, having him return to humanity as soon as possible might be for the better, so that he's not discovered later and presumed to have been imperiled by the animals. A bigger reason still is for him to potentially teach humans the jungle's laws and why they shouldn't needlessly place nature in harm's way. The underlying issue in all this is that Mowgli would have to adjust to an entirely different culture, adding a new layer to the events that might take place after the main story. None of this is black and white, and change obviously won't occur without some degree of assimilation. Just like how we are given context to the jungle mentality, Mowgli would need to understand how people function before he is able to engage with them diplomatically. Speaking of black and white, the cast as a whole lies somewhere in the gray area. While it can be argued that there are depictions of animal cruelty in this film, because this is a fantasy setting where we are dealing with personified beings, it works effectively to show that there's a time and place for both civility and aggression respectively if one of the two options doesn't solve the problem. This, in and of itself, is controversial and thus debatable, though the film does well in addressing the issue and allowing for such discussion to take place among viewers. Give credit where credit is due. Cartoons are wrongfully hand-waved as just kid stuff, and this one has plenty of material for the adults to get invested in. While it is obvious who the main antagonist is, as I've mentioned, other characters display instances of deviance too. The film wastes very little time getting to the conflict, and gives us just enough backstory to establish the gravity of the situation. It is self-contained and refrains from inserting filler, save the montage of Mowgli causing mischief, although it does provide comedic relief and segues seamlessly into Bagheera's big reveal. The dialogue is very poetic and insightful, all while remaining translatable for a younger audience. The film takes a darker turn, portraying various levels of cynicism harbored by all the characters, in addition to mild cartoon violence. My two favorite characters would have to be the mother wolf and Bagheera. The mother is doting, but she can also pack a punch when telling Shere Khan off. Bagheera maintains composure and is respectable as the voice of reason in this cast. These characters are proactive in setting things straight while retaining incredibly likable and even muted personalities. The same can generally be said for the others, who oscillate between such laid-back performances and a pure scarefest. For the most part, McDowell does a fantastic job with his voiceovers. Tabaki is a sleazy yet cowardly minion, Akela is a wise yet soft-spoken leader, and Shere Khan is a menacing, bloodthirsty predator. Shere Khan, however, is quite downplayed in this story. I know I said that the film gives enough context, but I wish that Shere Khan himself had more screen time. It is implied that there's more to his story, and I definitely don't condone shoehorning villains in stories just for the sake of being evil, so it would have been nice had that been explored further. The film isn't without a few other setbacks. While McDowell had the ability to produce a range of voices, he unfortunately wasn't able to nail down Mowgli's. It would have been different if he were just a side character, as you wouldn't have to hear him much, but Mowgli's voice was just off-putting here. He sounds much older than he should. They should have brought in a teenager at the very least to provide a more compelling voice. The art style is classic Chuck Jones, with the contrasting colors, curly smiles, and doe eyes. However, there are times when the animations don't quite match up with the characters' movements, and their lips aren't always synced up with their lines. I give it a pass though, because it's decent enough for visual appeal's sake, and the script is truly the heart of this production. We also have to remember that it's almost half a century old at the time of writing, and did not have a large team or budget behind it back then. If you've got half an hour to spare, children to entertain, and or crave some good old-fashioned pencil-drawn animation, look no further than Mowgli's brothers.